We're the Young Indy Chroniclers podcast, and we're producing a new feature-length documentary, George Lucas, The Lost Golden Age.
George Lucas was going to do this Lawrence of Arabia scale epic on a 16mm budget.
You got a chance to have the same adventure making the show as what Indy was doing.
His stuff is really quite political.
You didn't think I was going to run, did you?
I learned that when George says he wants to ultimately change or fix something, that he was going to do it.
We built a Kickstarter campaign to support the film. Late pledges are available now at Kickstarter.com.
Indiana, we are simply passing through history. This is history.
Welcome to the Young Indy Chroniclers, a podcast about the making of the show The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which first aired on ABC in 1992.
Kept thinking about what was Indiana Jones like as a young man. I came up with this idea of him seeing the world through the eyes of a soldier and a secret agent.
Over the course of our podcast, we're going to talk to a whole host of very talented people who either worked on this show or were there from the beginning.
We were able to shoot it on location in the real places where these events took place.
Oh, make it up as you go. Oh boy, that's great advice.
We hired some of the best European directors, a whole host of very, very talented people.
I'm your host, Peter Holmstrom.
And I'm Daniel Noah, and this is the Young Indy Chroniclers.
There's only one rule, Indiana. Stay alive.
Welcome back to the Young Indy Chroniclers, the one and only podcast devoted specifically to the Young Indiana Jones television series and franchise. I'm your host, Peter Holmstrom, and joining me on this adventure of a lifetime is Mr. Daniel Noah.
I'm riding the back of a pickup truck.
We've reached the end of another chapter in this epic journey. This is our season 3 finale. And I don't know about you, Daniel, but I couldn't have dreamed that this season finale would shape up the way that it did.
Oh, and I don't even think we knew what the season finale was going to be, but I think when we had this experience that they're going to hear about, I think we had a sense that, barring some miraculous guest, that this had to be our season finale.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've teased this on a number of episodes leading up to it, but this is a recap of our big epic trip to Skywalker Ranch in December. So just to let you guys know what you're going to hear going forward into the episode, we recorded this back in December. So what you're going to hear first is Ben Burtt's introduction to Attack of the Hawkmen, the director's cut of Attack of the Hawkmen, which was screened at Skywalker Ranch in December, before a crowd where we were also in attendance. And then you're going to hear our personal recollections of that experience. This was recorded on the drive home because we wanted to get to it when it was fresh in our minds. And I don't know about you, Daniel, but I was even listening to it again and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. So I'm glad we did it when we did it because memories are best to capture close and in the moment. But you'll have to forgive any, you'll hear some, it was recorded in a car. So you have to forgive any, Daniel did some great work to minimize the car noise, but you'll still hear a couple of things in there. So please forgive that. Most notably though, you'll hear me talking a little louder than I often do. Just because I feel like you're in a car, you need to project. And then after that, you're going to hear a Q&A, from Ben. Again, back at the ranch that he did following the screening. So he'll be speaking to not just the director's cut, specifically of Attack of the Hawkmen, but also Young Indy in general, and some other questions that came up regarding his career. So quite an experience.
I think we speak in the recap. I think we speak a little bit about the Q&A and that screening. And one thing I remembered saying at the time and then reviewing the Q&A, I felt again, it was just so cool to see some young people in the theater encountering young Indiana Jones for the first time and asking the questions that you would think they would ask, being really engaged with it and
absolutely
kind of being like, where can we see more of this? Like, this is great. So I hope you guys, as you listen or watch, get some of that feeling yourselves and realize that, people like Ben and others still carry a torch for this show. And there's a lot of passion left there. And this episode is going to really share that with you. In the recap section, we, of course, will go into detail on the alternate cut of Attack of the Hawkmen, as well as the alternate cut for Palestine 1917, which I actually was doing some research for the documentary and had a properly cite clips. And I confirmed that, that episode never aired in the United States in its original form, but it did air overseas. And we have a copy of the international version, and we were able to see parts of which we referenced in the conversation. And then, of course, the final Daredevils of the Desert airs on USA in October of 99, right before the VHS release. And so it's a long journey, a 7-year journey or so from when they started shooting to when they had something that they even considered finished. Because I feel like the international version was like, well, we'll release it. But clearly there was this sense of, we may not have gotten all the way to where we want to be. So it's a great part of the history. And of course, our trip to Skywalker Ranch is just a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we're happy to share that with all of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Daniel, how about we get on into this here? Audience members, hope you enjoy the journey. This is our season 3 finale, and away we go.
Now, George Lucas has a passion for history, especially 20th century history. Having grown up as a boomer himself, mid-century, had a love for American history and world history. And I think he always wanted to be able to teach history and to bring the messages from history and about historic characters to an audience. And that wasn't so easy in the feature films, which were mostly fantasy, but he also wanted to take one of his beloved characters, Indiana Jones, and in a way vicariously time travel through history of the 20th century in a dramatic TV series. And thus he created the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and it was eventually sold to Paramount Television in 1991 or 2. And Rick McCallum was the overall producer of the series. Rick was a tireless, energetic man who got the most out of the modest little budgets that were provided for television at that time. It wasn't feature film kind of money. And so I commend Rick. He got amazing locations and crew and costumes and special effects and everything from places all over Europe, because we shot mostly in Europe and in some 20 countries around the world in the course of the whole series. Originally, there were about 28, I'm guessing, episodes made, which were broadcast in 1992, 1993, if I'm right. If the podcasters are out here, you can yell out the right answer. And they were on ABC television. They were about 48 minutes each, as you would normally make a show for television at that time. And they followed a chronicle of Indiana Jones's life from approximately 1910 to 1920. And they were done in a chronological series. So in essence, it was a chronicle. It was like a diary of Indiana Jones from being a child until he got to college and graduated in 1920. And in each episode, he would meet up with some non-fictional characters from history. It might be Picasso, it might be Mata Hari, it might be Baron von Richthofen, and he would get involved as a fictional character in this historic recreation. And so it was not only an entertainment series, but also the idea was to display some real history there. And Indy would learn lessons along the way. The shows were of different genres. You had comedies, you had war movies, you had a vampire movie, you had a musical, you had a gangster genre. And so it was fun for the whole crew and everyone working on this series, because over a period of 6 weeks or so, you'd go through production on a new genre. And so it was fun to finish a show, and then what do we have next? Oh, we're going to do a Western, or we're going to go to Africa and shoot a story with wild animals and all of that. So there were about 28 of those episodes in the first 2 seasons. It did okay in the ratings. It was not a giant blockbuster, partly because it was an anthology, I think, and people were kind of, television habits were more that you would like to come back to the same living room in a sitcom each week, or the same police station in a cop show with the same characters. You felt familiar with them. And shows that were an anthology where you had different characters, different location each week. You had Indy, Remy, and Indy's family reoccurring. They were continuing characters, but you had to pay attention because it was a story in a new place and there was some history to be learned. Also, I think it was underestimated the public's knowledge of American history and world history, really, and so they couldn't quite appreciate some of the nuances in it, in the storylines, because they just didn't know the story. They didn't know what they were. Some of these characters and events were based on known facts. But in any case, they made these 28 episodes. Then in the third season, they dropped the idea of having the 1 hour episodes, and they decided to make TV movies. So they made 4 films that were, 90 minutes or plus each, for the Family Channel, no longer on ABC. And the movie we're going to see tonight is one of those made as a feature. And but later, the series kept going, and George's vision was to take all the episodes and shoot some new material, write some connecting threads between them, and eventually made 22 feature films out of a whole chronicle, which is what's available now. It's called The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones. And it was released as a Blu-ray set, a DVD set. And it was for a while posted on Disney Plus 2 years ago, something like that. Some of these facts, I do want to mention the Young Indiana Jones Chroniclers, Peter Holstrom, Daniel Noah, right here. They've come up today. They were partly inspiration for running this film because I wanted to show off to them and show them what Young Indy might look like in a theatrical setting. So they're I think it's the third season now, correct? And what they've done is a fantastic job because nobody else has done it. They have interviewed a few dozen, or at least 20 people. I'm not sure.
I lost track a long time ago.
Lost track. They've talked to writers, producers, actors, people in post-production, people in marketing that were involved with the series, long-form podcasts, and it's really the only place that the history of this series is being documented. So it's great that it's being preserved in a first-hand manner by talking to the people that worked on it before they're gone or they forget. And a lot of things we've all forgotten since it was 30-something years ago. I got involved in it first. I wasn't right there from the beginning, but I knew that George was developing the series. I was off making some IMAX space movies, and was getting some directing experience. But one of the early episodes, they wanted some help shooting some temporary home video of young Indy doing things, riding a horse, a battle scene of Pancho Villa's men and rebels in the war in 1913 south of the border. And I was asked if I would go out and shoot temporarily sloppy Videomatic shots, which they could intercut with some stock footage they bought from a movie called Old Gringo with Gregory Peck. He's not in it, but all the horses and battles are. It's one way of saving money in the series. And so I got involved shooting those temporary shots and putting them together to be a guide for the actual shooting. And then I got involved shooting actual shots, what's called second unit for the series. I was sent to Africa for the first of 2 trips to Africa. The first time my job was I did some interviews with cast members, but I was off and up a river shooting crocodiles, or I was out with soldiers and safari characters marching over the landscape, getting shots of them against sunsets and things. All the kind of shots. What second unit is that you do the shots that the director doesn't have time to do. You don't want to waste the time of the director and the cast doing a shot over the shoulder of somebody writing a letter or looking at the clock or whatever those cutaways are. So I was doing that, and I ended up doing shots for just about every episode, and it led to getting larger and larger assignments to do whole sequences and scenes, because under the schedules we had, it wasn't always possible for the principal director to get absolutely everything shot in the days set aside for it. That eventually led, and I was also editing whole shows while I was there. And Dana Mulligan, where are you? You didn't stand up and volunteer yourself. Dana was my editorial assistant, and later she did a lot of the cutting on the shows. Thank you, Dana. Stand up and get everything. Dana was a fantastic partner to work with, and we were working on the Edit Droid, which is a whole new system, requiring new thinking, new technology, new ways of doing things. And I appreciate all you did, Dana, and I'm certain you cut some of the sequences here in Hawkmen tonight. In fact, you recut it when I had the flu. What I had made was too long for the time slot. and then I got the flu, and while I got the flu, George and Rick and Dana cut it down to 92 minutes, okay? Right? That's what I remember happening.
Have you expanded it again since?
Have I what?
Expanded it?
I'll get to that. Tonight is revenge. It's all gone back in. Okay, so what you're going to see tonight is kind of a mashup because of what's survived. Now, as an editor, I should know better because I've cut lots of films down, like quite a bit, and even though there's could be wonderful material, you find that it's not necessary for the story, and it's a good thing to recognize that's what an editor should do. But I decided to go against that philosophy and put everything back in that was taken out. So you're going to see tonight a sort of a mashup of about 25 minutes of new material. It's never been seen. So this is the world premiere of that stuff. And it rambles a little bit, and also the quality will change. Get used to it, because some of it only survived on a VHS cassette, basically. And so that doesn't translate. You blow it up for a big screen like this. One of the worst scenes is right toward the beginning, after the prologue and the credits and an opening scene with Indy and Remy going to school. The next scene in a restaurant is kind of as bad as it gets for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But after that, you'll see some reasonably good video for the rest of the show, including about 10 or 15 minutes of it from the original negative. And that stuff will look much better than it ever looked on television, because although we shot on film, we shot in 16 millimeter film, it was immediately transferred to video, cut in the video world on the Edit Droid, and then it was completed to save money by just carrying that video through to broadcast in standard definition. So the shows only exist in an older, now kind of an obsolete video format. It doesn't translate so well to the big screen or to your big TV set. But I've done some tricks with this technically. I've tried to do the best I can to up-res it and do other things. You don't have to worry about that. But you will see some changes from widescreen to square screen and so on. But I think we can handle that, right? We can handle that. This film was originally 2 scripts written as short episodes, 1-hour episodes. My job was to rewrite them and combine them into one feature, so all would have one story arc. It's not entirely successful, as that it really does have kind of 2 stories in it, although I tried to bring some characters from the end into the beginning and from the beginning to the end and so on. It got better in that regard, but it still has a bit of a 2 arc structure. But it had extra complexities that other indies didn't have because it was aviation. And when you film a movie with aircraft in it, and you have only less than $2 million to make a feature-length film, it's almost an impossible task because aviation requires airplanes. And airplanes fly in the sky. So how do you get cameras aloft? How do you deal with weather changes? You can't get successful aviation movies unless you've got clouds in the background, so there's some sense of relative movement in the sky. And so it's usually a very expensive proposition. But we managed to get through all that, so you can judge for yourself on that. Actors, there's one major Star Wars actor in this. I'm not going to tell you who it is. playing a cameo part. See if you can guess. There's one Doctor Who in this, if you're a Doctor Who fan. And there's another actor named Mark Warren who plays Baron von Richthofen. He has his own TV series on Masterpiece Mystery. It's kind of a CSI in Amsterdam series. Van der Valk, it's called, if you've seen it. It's been on a few seasons. Composer is Joel McNeely. I don't think Joel made it here tonight, Joel. No? But it's nice to see you. So we shot in Prague. And when you shoot in Prague, you have to shoot in Alabama and Oregon, okay? That's the best place to find Europe. Alabama and Oregon and Prague. Had wonderful settings that were left over from old buildings. I realized recently, having seen Amadeus, that we actually were in several of the same rooms that Amadeus was shot in, and exploited those. Okay, that I think is basically the intro. So enjoy Attack of the Hawkmen. And if you want to ask a few questions afterwards, we can take a very brief time and do that. But we have to clear out of the range soon. But if you're itching with a question, you can go if you want. If you want to stay and ask a question, I'll stay for 5 or 10 minutes and we'll talk about it, okay? So, let's go for it.
Well, Peter, we are now in the car driving home. Why don't you explain to people listening what we did this week?
Well, we had a truly dream of a lifetime happen to us. We were invited to a visit to Skywalker Ranch to see a director's cut, extended cut, special edition, whatever you want to call it, cut of Attack of the Hawkmen. Ben Burtt very kindly invited us up there. We were able to record for our documentary, a nice little interview, and he showed us a lot of cool, never before seen by the fans anyway, behind the scenes material from Young Indy, and all sorts of other stuff. Daniel,
Yeah, no, I think, and obviously, we were able to record, I think, for about an hour and a half for the documentary, which is very good. It's certainly over an hour. It was in 3 little sessions, so I haven't looked at the timing exactly. But I think what I really am excited to talk about now, sort of while it's fresh, is the things that we saw that we didn't record, and we were not able to record, of course, for a number of reasons.
Sure.
But I also want to sort of share our experience, of course, we were invited. There's a process, a registration process. We learned that, George owns the ranch, and this is public information, but all of our paperwork, all of our, all that was through George's company, which for me felt very special. And was very excited to have that experience and go through those gates for the first time.
Absolutely.
And drive that road as slow as we possibly could, blasting, John Williams music.
Yeah.
To go into the technical building. And, now it's so quiet there. We were not able to go to the main house. We could see it from a distance, but it's closed and it's not open. It's not the sort of thing that even people on the ranch can sort of just go to. That is George's house, as it were. But we got to spend the day in the technical building, which is where Skywalker Sound is. It's where all the prequels were mastered and for sound and previewed in the theater. And basically probably every big Lucasfilm project, I think he said, starting in about 1987.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the technical building?
It was so beautiful. The thing that really struck me was from the outside, it looks like a good sized building. Like, it's not small by any stretch, but once you actually get inside and you see just how much is there, you realize, like, it is, it's bigger than it looks. Like, it's there's a massive theater, which we've seen in plenty of behind the scenes documentaries, and that's like in the basement level. There's an entire sound recording stage where they could film orchestras and, sound effects, things like that. Big vaulted ceilings. It's a two-story place. And there's many, like, kind of common areas. The one we mostly congregated in was nearby to Ben's office, and it's where they would have breakfast and laid out, and it's where, the employees could get coffee. And, it was really, really remarkable. And let me tell you guys, the coffee there, fantastic. I'm just so envious of those guys having a great coffee. every day of their lives.
Well, we got to have coffee in a Skywalker sound mug. They're just out there, they're just next to the coffee pot.
Yeah.
And it was great.
The interior design it's a lot of natural colors, a lot of wood, a lot of like I would describe it as like a very calming presence. It's not you wouldn't necessarily even think it's a film, anything related to film there. It's just it has a very cozy vibe to it. The walls are just covered with original vintage one sheets. A lot of foreign posters, but foreign posters for American movies, I should say. Plenty of foreign movies too. But George's such a fan of film history, and undoubtedly a fan of just like original one sheets as well, because so many of these were everywhere, and it was just very special to see those as well, because really just such a testament to the film history of it all. And then we made our way. We met up with Ben, very kind to basically clear his day for us. I mean, he's been working really hard on a bunch of projects. I suppose we can't talk about what.
We shouldn't say, but it was very exciting. It's a big project. Perhaps when it comes out, we can say something. He didn't tell us anything about what he was doing for it, but very exciting.
Yeah. But he basically cleared his day for us. He
told a very big director, though. I think that's the fun part of the story. We won't say who.
Oh.
That he was busy today.
Yeah.
That he's like, tell him I'm not available, and then that was really cool. Person is a very, very significant director. So.
So we met up. The first thing he did was kind of show us around the technical building. We
met his son, Ben, also named Ben, who works there, and he came up and said hello. He seemed very nice.
Very nice.
Loved meeting him.
Yeah.
We went into you mentioned the recording stage. What was really cool to me about that is someone who obviously edits this podcast, when you go into the stage, and Ben said that the acoustics are designed to sound like a European cathedral.
Yeah.
And it can be dampened, but that's sort of how it's designed. But then when you go into the theater, it's silent.
Yeah.
The room is completely isolated. And to just see that picture of like, okay, when you make the sound, you sort of want to control some ambiance, but then when you hear the sound, you don't really want to hear anything else.
Right. And was that, am I mixing this up, was that the recording stage? Is that where they recorded Curse of the Jackal?
It is, yes. Yeah. It's the only, he explained some of that background of, they had hoped to do more scores there and do all of Young Indy's score there, but that just the cost of doing a score in the United States, as you maybe have heard on our episode with Joel McNeely, being able to go overseas was much more cost effective.
Yeah.
So only the pilot was recorded there.
Yeah, and but it's not to say that the stage has been empty. They were working on a film there. They'd had a full orchestra in, right? It was kind of whole setup.
Yeah, again, we won't say what it was, but it looked very exciting and sort of innovative, I suppose. Different take on a genre.
Absolutely. And showed us around there, showed us around some other areas in the technical building. But then we went up to his office and we were able to see.
Spent most of the day in his office.
Yeah, and that was just such a experience. Like, it's hard to even put it into words, but his office is very large. He's been there for many years, but it's also he's a collector. He just collects these pieces of film history, both from his own career, but then from other projects as well. So there's just these. It's like a mini museum in so many ways. We were able to see his Academy Award from 1977 or 1978, right?
Yeah, 78 Academy Awards for Star Wars
for the 77 film year. We were able to see an original version of the Wilhelm Scream.
Yeah, which we have a photo of, which we can probably show that. It's him holding the Wilhelm Scream.
Yeah, and that was shocking, honestly, that he had it. Like, I figured that would have been in some archive, some vaults or whatever, but it was just there, right there. I guess it's probably been copied so many times by now, they don't really...
Oh yeah, it's digital, but it's really just for the nostalgia of it.
Yeah.
My favorite thing we saw, which was sort of, you would be forgiven for missing it, is the item through which the sound for the lid of the Ark of the Covenant was made, which of course, if you know the story of that, is the lid of a toilet, the back of a toilet, and it's there, sort of serving a functional purpose.
Yeah. I nearly stepped on it. I thought it was just one of those coverings for...
Peter almost defiled the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
But he didn't, thankfully, and he's still with us.
Yeah. live to defile another day. But yeah, we saw, we were able to hold his original Star Wars script, the script that George gave him, and there was a script that he made notes on, like it was, was the used version. It wasn't like a reproduction.
To work on the film.
To work on the
working
film.
script.
Yeah, and I imagine the cover was new. That looked a little.
No, I think that was
original?
vintage.
Yeah.
Vintage. I mean, I think that was certainly from the period. I suspect he simply took very good care of it.
Wow. But there was so many pieces of memorabilia there. There was from Young Indy. There was one of the airplane models that was used in Attack of the Hawkmen that was hanging down. What other Young Indy stuff was there?
Not a lot.
Weren't you talking about one of the?
I have a photo of so the pole giant triplane around which the climax of Attack of the Hawkmen is set.
Yeah.
It blows up, and they destroyed the model in that to make that scene. But Ben has basically the landing gear.
Yeah.
That's all that's left, and he's got it on his shelf.
Yeah, that was really, really special. I also just loved he had like a massive cardboard standee, I think it was, from Crystal Skull, just behind his couch.
Like a poster.
Big old thing. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. And of course, I mean, it's a working office, so he has a soundboard, he has his TV setup, he has computers.
Yeah, beautiful setup, 5.1 sound system in the office with a plasma screen. And that plasma screen is where he showed us a lot of stuff that I think would be probably very interesting to
Absolutely.
the Young Indy stuff. And of course, we're not given copies of this, so we can't show it to you, but I think it's totally fair for us to describe to you what we saw.
Absolutely.
And there were a lot of different things, starting maybe on the smaller side. Ben has several sort of behind-the-scenes reels, particularly focusing on the work of the second unit.
Yep.
And some of the things that were surprising to us, for example, the closing shots of Curse of the Jackal / Spring Break Adventure, where Indy and Remy ride off into the sunset. Basically, every shot in that sequence that's not the close-up of the two leads is Ben and second unit.
Yeah.
And so, all shot in California, no less, near Edwards Air Force Base. And that was sort of very surpring. It edits together so well, you just sort of assumed that it was the main actors.
It was surprising how much, because he showed us then this was all part of like a montage, basically, best of, or whatever, from his second unit photography, and it was amazing how much he shot. And I think his second unit, for industry people, they'll know it as like, well, this is where the action goes, or this is where like stuff where you don't need your leads at will be filmed. But it seemed like their unit was, this was the pickup shot unit. This was the stuff that would sometimes hold scenes, sometimes, dense dialogue stuff would be picked up by these people.
Well, and a whole run of it was stuff, and he showed us some of those places that was shot at the ranch, in little places, little hills and stuff, and they would build small sets. There are a lot of stuff from the Trenches of Hell episode with the German machine gunners.
Yeah.
Most of sort of the close-ups of those that where you're not sort of looking back at Indy are all second unit and all shot at the ranch.
Yeah.
And, we saw the raw footage of the machine gunners at, I don't know if there were any explosions, but a lot of action, a lot of deaths, a lot of people taking hits, dying. And Ben is in many of these shots, many of which are in the final episode.
And he showed us, he talked about doing this on the podcast episode we had him on, but the test footage that they used, build out animatics for Curse of the Jackal, where Ben would be riding the horses that were at the ranch at the time. They hopped on those horses. Ben was on one, and a couple other people were on some others.
And the footage was shot by George. I imagine he was getting very specific bits. The shots themselves, as you say, they really do match what's in the final episode. And again, we don't have it, but if we did, we could line them up and show you the shot of Flannery riding the horse is framed very much the way Ben Burtt riding the horse is. We saw the shot where Ben falls off the horse, which I think you mentioned in our episode. It was a bit funny, and George, again, on the camera, seems to have been enjoying it because he sort of tracks with the action, as it were.
Yeah. Keep rolling.
Yeah. So we saw that. We saw, again, a lot of second unit stunt work. The shot where the guy jumps off the train and lands in the dirt. We kind of saw that uninterrupted, the full take.
It wasn't not a stunt. It was a stunt, but this was the guy that just did it. There was no crash pads underneath, and you see it, and what I always imagined was he just jumps off the train. He does like a backflip, basically, off the train, lands on his back in the ground, and it's like, facing in the other direction. And I was like, good guy, how does somebody walk away from that? But
yeah, it was good. It was a good job. You could see that the dirt was kind of softened.
It was a little softer, but it's still you're hitting it pretty hard. But that was surprising to see that. And you also saw footage of the kind of the stunt training camp they had, which was very interesting. All populated by locals, and then would be utilized in like the opening battle for Oganga, as well as Phantom Train of Doom and things like that.
And we saw a lot of the crew. Paige, one of our previous guests, we saw several shots of her.
Yeah.
One she was working with Ben on some second unit, and just it was the one that we were laughing because she was clearly her job to start. Ben told us this to start the G-Zap cameras.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of running between cameras, and he's like, "Oh, she has to start 2 cameras. Like it's a lot of work. Actually, they're really making her work for this."
Yeah.
But it was just, and we got to see the G-Zap cameras or footage of them, which I honestly did not know what they looked like.
Yeah.
Heard about these cameras so much, and they're kind of small, but maybe not as small as you'd think. We're used to cameras being so small. These are probably the size of a camcorder, perhaps.
Yeah.
With a small roll of film inside, a very sturdy-looking lens.
Yeah. Pretty looking body. Yeah.
Yeah, they're hardened.
The stuff that
hardened bodies.
Yeah, get shot, so to speak. Saw Portia. Saw a lot of Chris Bromley. We saw kind of a super real, a super cut rather of all the aerial photography that was done for not aerial photography. The shots of the planes, the miniatures from Attack of the Hawkmen.
We should talk about that. So Ben showed us a reel of the shots that he had scanned in high definition from the film negative, which included both 16 and 35 millimeter elements, and also included a lot of footage of the planes.
Yeah.
And I will say it was quite stunning and
truly
composed better than perhaps one might have thought. Sometimes you see these things uncropped and it's really clearly not staged properly, but honestly, in most of the shots we saw, there really was no issue.
No.
A lot of exteriors, a lot of sets that are clean, no gack or whatever. I was really moved by it. What did you think of it?
It was emotional, honestly, especially the 35 footage of the planes. For the audience out there, the film was mainly shot on 16 millimeter, but the special effects shots that they knew they were going to change and augment later on, they would shoot in 35. So, and so as it happened, I guess they didn't really need to do much to the plane shots, but they shot it in 35 anyway. And so what you're seeing here is full frame, full 16:9 of these aerial photography shots, and they are just absolutely gorgeous. It was really shocking just how good they looked. And they're scanned, but there hasn't been any color correction. There's not, there's still stuff to improve, but even just in this raw form, just blew me away.
The detail is there was also scenes of Flannery as Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Some scenes that are from the episode that we've seen, some that were from the deleted sections we'll talk about shortly. But in all those cases, it really looked like a contemporary film in terms of the clarity and the quality. It was quite stunning to see it, and really reinforced for me that a remaster using the original film elements really is necessary and would be a really worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, I think we talk about how the writing, the performance, the scope has always been feature quality, but in the end it's standard def. It's not something that you could realistically imagine seeing on a big screen. But I think if you were to go back and do a proper remaster, going back to the negative, this stuff could be shown in a massive theater and hold up very well against a lot of other repertory films from the era.
Absolutely, and certainly for a more moderately budgeted film and approached that way, quite stunning. And the set dressing, the production design, all those things really glow. There was a shot in the deleted section which we did end up seeing integrated into the cut and where it was edited, but the raw shot of Indy walking across this plaza in this town, I don't know if the camera was on a crane, but it's a beautifully sweeping shot.
Yeah.
And the entire town is dressed. There's no trickery. There's extras in costume. There's period-appropriate vehicles.
Yeah.
It really looks like you're back in 1917, and in high definition. The detail is glorious.
It's really wonderful, and I think it's. And we also learned throughout the day as well that it might not be as much of a headache to do this kind of a remaster. It'll still be work. You have to get a team of people, and it would be an undertaking. But it's not as potentially intimidating as some other remasters have been. They kept a lot of logs, kept detailed material.
Yeah, it would be an archival project, but assuming everything was stored as it most likely was.
Yeah.
The information needed should be there.
Yeah. And it's, it just really, we just need to see it, honestly. Like, it's one of those tragedies for a lot of movies and TV shows from the 90s is they might be shot on film, but then they're edited on VHS. And therefore, the best versions that have only ever been available are the VHS versions. And that's such a tragedy because it limits the archival possibilities for these TV shows, these films. And I think, that needs to be archived. Whether it's this show or whether it's other shows of this type, it shouldn't just be the popular ones. It should be all of them because these things they belong in a museum, and the best versions need to be preserved for time. VHS tapes degrade, and even then, it's not the best possible version. The version that was originally intended.
Well, and not to bore people with technical details, but the switch from interlaced video to progressive high-definition video is really what makes home video cinematic.
Yeah.
And so all these things were done before that, which means you were taking a filmed image, converting into this interlaced format, and that was some of the questions I was asking some of the technical people we got to meet, was how that process was done, and could it have been done in a way where you could have gone back to the film reels, and the answer was they believed so.
Yeah.
But because of that, even if you were to up-res, as Ben did, we saw some scenes which looked very good, but even so, they are artifacts. Because when you store video that way, it simply doesn't translate perfectly into a progressive medium, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And so you really need to go back to that source.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, we saw that. We saw a very funny blooper reel, which was really nice. It seemed, if memory serves, it was mostly surrounding Beersheba, and so you'd see a lot of Catherine Zeta-Jones and Sean and a bit of Daniel Craig. Not much though, not much. But very fun. It's nice to see these guys just having a good time. But also some of the harrowing, stuff that happened. Pigeons not cooperating, things like that.
That was pretty funny. Indy throws the carrier pigeon out the window, and it just keeps coming back. And at one point, Sean's like, "We got a problem," or something like that.
Yeah.
Bad news.
So that was very fun, and these things. I mean, Ben just does them. Like, they're not. These weren't
not official.
They weren't official. They weren't, and it seems like this is something he just really enjoys doing. Is just kind of making these documentaries.
Well, and we saw the line that he told us about in his interview. The wires must have been cut by the shelling, and we saw both versions. Like, there were two attempts to film it in completely different sets with completely different actors. The second actor is the actor you see in the final, but it's a different voice. They had to dub him because no one could get this line right.
Yeah.
And it was funny because there was a lot of takes. I mean, I want to say 8 takes maybe of this flub. I want to talk about that episode, but before, was there anything else we saw short form? You mentioned some of the soldier stuff. The grenade shots and trenches fell again. Like, they're throwing the grenades to each other. All of that was shot at the ranch.
Yeah.
I think he had some BTS footage actually of them doing that you can kind of see everything.
Yeah, he had a super cut of like best of second unit photography from season 1 in particular. So that, in this case, what that meant was the first 15. So you'd be talking about a lot of fun material. Oganga, things like that.
Yeah, Sean dancing in his eunuch outfit.
Sean dancing in his eunuch outfit. Yeah.
We saw a lot of stuff of the Oganga episode behind the scenes.
We did.
With Simon Windsor directing.
Yeah.
It makeup, the people who are sick in the village, makeup work. Yeah. I think probably better than you could see in the episode.
It looks
really
great. I was like, oh god, they're actual illness. Yeah, a lot of behind the scenes from the planes again. I mean, that was all shot in Oregon. You saw Chris Bromley, a former guest on the show, and Ben, and they were up there in Oregon. Dealing with these radio controlled planes, which looked great. And it was fun to see the way they did this. Like, it was basically just the two of them.
Yeah.
And maybe one other person.
One other guy. Yeah, I think they had another guy with
and Chris is out there with this massive smoke machine that's billowing up these plumes. The idea of making it look like clouds are in front of you and the plane's going behind those clouds. And Ben's there as well. And it was very interesting. There was that shot of the plane that nicked the fence. That was
that was
something else.
That was something else, though. That was just that he happened to be there.
That was
but he did. Actually,
show.
that was interesting though, because obviously we've talked a lot about Attack of the Hawkmen and how the effects were done, but there are other planes in the series in earlier episodes, and he kind of explained how that was done in a particular area near San Diego where it is legal to fly these old planes. And they did shots for Curse of the Jackal and for Verdun, Demons of Deception, at this location.
Yeah.
And so those planes, or many shots of them, are sort of real. But he pointed out it's very dangerous to fly these planes. It's why you could only go to this one place, and we're very limited in what they could do. And he even mentioned at one point he was shooting from a helicopter. You know, he would be in a helicopter sort of, and that's how you'd get these aerial shots of these planes flying.
Well, there was the shot too, and I think it was with Frank in Alabama, where they were filming the plane. They were
buzzing the camera. That was dangerous. Yes.
Yeah, that plane flew pretty low, and that was surprising. Like basically, it was a plane coming in for a landing, and they were just filming it. I don't think it ends up in the episode, but like the plane just zips right overhead, and they're a couple of feet above the camera guys.
They looked freaked out.
Yeah, it was worth being freaked out about. But
yeah, I'm trying to think. There was, like you mentioned, the stunt school. A lot of Simon Crane footage behind the scenes. Some David Tattersall. A lot of Rick on a CB radio at one point. Actually, and Chris told this story about how they had taken a hot air balloon ride and then came down and there was a breakfast spread. We actually saw footage of the breakfast. So you see Rick and his team and the guys. It was a very kind of low to the ground table, but white tablecloth. They had champagne. So we saw that. That was very cool.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So I mean, what we saw very much, I think, what we've heard lined up. It really was getting a window into production.
Yeah.
How it worked.
A lot of, it was a lot of candid stuff. It wasn't there wasn't like a narrator and a narrative to this stuff necessarily, but it was candid home video footage. And just, again, just really like this that style of filmmaking that we all kind of dream about. It's like they're just there. Everyone's helping out. Everyone's doing different things and learning different skills every day, and getting out there and playing. Oh, we saw Ben talked about this on his interview as well, but we saw the comparison to the stunt, the fight. The
Slugfest reel that they used for the reshoot of the Daniel Craig fist fight.
Yeah.
Ben edited together a bunch of fights from movies, John Wayne, James Bond, other black and white films I didn't recognize.
Yeah.
And he showed us the whole thing.
Yeah. And it was really, really instructive because it matched very, very closely, honestly. And it was an interesting way to look at how fights used to be created, choreographed. Today it's more with the stunt team and the filmmakers are brought in later to talk about how they'll shoot it. But, at the time, this was very much like you would do in the style that George would do with the trench run in Star Wars. Ben is doing that now. It's just like you kind of do a rough animatic of what you want the fight to look like. And yeah, it was, very fascinating, very interesting. We learned how Ben did it, which was basically he would record these movies off his TV, and then that would give him the footage, which then he could play around with on a computer.
I think people forget that playback on a show like that really didn't exist in any effective way, and they'd have to wait for dailies. So you're shooting a fight like that, you're trusting the camera operator. Even then, you're looking for tiny details. I mean, that's something Vic talked about in his episode, and Raiders, he told Steven Spielberg, I don't think that looked like a hit.
Yeah.
And people were like, well, all right, he shot it again, and not until they saw the dailies did they know.
Yeah.
And so that was still a thing. And so, if you're going to do a fight scene, it really does have to be planned. It has to be very specific, so that you can do it multiple times and hope that, in that you have takes that will work and there won't be issues.
Should we talk about Beersheba?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ben was very kind to us.
Yes.
And showed us his first cut of the Beersheba, Palestine, 1917 episode that would eventually become Daredevils of the Desert.
Yeah.
But of course, was completed as an hour-long version that aired overseas. But that's not even the version we saw. Yeah. We saw the first cut, as he described it. This is the cut I made that I then showed George and Rick. and then they made notes.
Yeah, it's not quite right to call it an assembly cut, because that's not quite, I guess, but
I think it's a first cut.
It's a first cut. It's
There's a lot of stock in there, like cutaways.
And it's his idea of laying out the narrative as best he saw it. And this, most notably, and the way that, he told us about this was like, this has the original ending in it. And what we didn't realize, though, and I think even, Ben didn't realize, is just how much other stuff had changed as well throughout the process. So the whole episode, what we saw was about 58 minutes long. So I think
it was 51. It was 58 or it was 51.
The episode was longer than the runtime that they had available. But what was fascinating, though, is you would think that might just mean like longer scenes or but instead what we see is a very different narrative trajectory for the episode itself, and some scenes that aren't there in the final version that we see now. And then a lot of scenes that you would think would have been in the original cut weren't there at all.
So the episode begins actually with a crawl, and Ben actually told us the reason was they had already decided at that point we're not going to have a George Hall introduction. This was fairly late in the second season, and they were moving away from this, and so that decision had been made. And so I think they were all a little unclear with how are we starting this episode? How are we getting into it?
Yeah.
And so he tried the crawl, which I guess George didn't like, but as it's set up. And what was interesting about the crawl, and I get why he wrote it this way, crawl really is more concerned with the spy element of the episode than anything else. Talking about how the war had moved to the desert and that it was sort of spy versus spy. And while there's a brief battle, the same kind of battle at the beginning of the episode now, very abbreviated. There's no Daniel Craig in the opening like there is now.
The advance has halted. The British are on the run.
And it pretty quickly cuts to the Cairo scene. Which I thought was interesting because I always thought maybe that was an addition, but it's not. That was clearly shot as part of the original, more or less the way it is. There might be a couple lines that get cut out, but it's pretty similar to the way it is. But because there's no other introduction, the Meinetzagen character really becomes the way into the story. Because that's what Indy is told in that scene.
You've been attached to the British for special assignment. Meinetzagen is the man in charge. Report to him in Rafa by Wednesday at the latest.
Meinetzagen? Africa. Meinetzagen is with British intelligence. He sent with a bunch of old men to blow up a German train. The man's a lunatic. He almost got me killed.
And then the next scene is him arriving and meeting Meinetzagen.
Jolly good to see you again. Are you surprised to hear from me?
You could say that, sir.
I just did.
And that's the narrative pretty much sticks with Indy through much of what you know from that episode. I will say there are a lot of stuff with the Australian guys clearly added way later, so that stuff's really not there.
Right.
But the rugby game is there. The scene in the canteen is longer. There's more dialogue. And there's a character, I think this was a big change that shocked us.
Big change.
That you actually see later in the final episode, but is a lot more significant in this cut, and that is the sort of the Turkish spy who works for Daniel Craig. And there's a line in the episode that's still there where they say there are spies in the camp, and they never really do anything with that.
With all the spies knocking about the camp, word is bound to get back to the Turks.
But in this version, this guy is in the canteen and he's watching Indy and Lawrence of Arabia and the other men talk and hearing the story of the intelligence letters and all the things. And at one point he sort of leaves, and it's shot in a way to sort of indicate he's a mysterious figure. You're kind of telegraphing that this guy is bad news. And then they go off to meet Catherine Zeta-Jones. Again, things sort of happen very quickly.
They do. And I think the biggest change that I noticed in this episode is that you're really following Indy on the journey. The movie cut version very much goes with the approach of like, here's this larger world, this larger conflict, and then we're going to hone in on this specific conflict that we're hoping to solve. And then, I know a guy that can help ensure that this conflict goes well. And in the extended cut, it's very clear too that like Indy's mission is to protect the wells, to make sure there's water there. Whereas here, it's like, that is, I guess, his mission, but it's not as hit as hard. And you don't quite have the same stakes as the movie-length cut. And granted, the movie-length cut's just longer, and they have more scenes, they have more room to play with.
Do you think they knew they were making history?
I think some of them did. And we will too if we take Jerusalem by Christmas.
It's not just the movie-length cut, because we were able to look at the international version briefly.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to go through this narrative before we go through the difference. It's okay, but I think it's significant. Again, there is no General Allenby in this cut at all.
I intend to be in Jerusalem by Christmas.
And how do you propose to achieve that, sir?
Worked. They're not sending their reinforcements to Beersheba.
And if Cheval can get through to the city before nightfall...
Jerusalem by Christmas. Congratulations, sir.
We're not out of the woods yet. Let's hope your Captain Defense comes through.
Yeah.
He does not appear. It might be referenced, but it doesn't appear.
Yeah.
So all you really get is Meinetzagen, who, for the purposes of this cut, sort of represents the authority of the British Army. You get no higher officer.
Yeah.
And there is a line which is gone where he says, at one point, I'm going to tell you everything over breakfast to Indy, which sort of sets up that he might be telling him things that we, the audience, are not privy to, and maybe actually sets up that ending a little better in a weird way, right? And there's a great line from Lawrence where he's like, Meinetzagen's the best guy there is. Do what he says, and you'll survive. And that's not really in the final cut either. I think Meinetzagen gets played a little more humorously, perhaps, in the final cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you might expect, if you're familiar with the extended cut, the journey to Beersheba, basically Indy and the soldiers kind of are going at about the same time, and Indy is maybe only half a day ahead of the army.
It's very quick, and I can't remember if there's a scene that's missing from the movie cut of like the Australians just picking up and going. You know, it's like it felt a little different. How there was a secretive notion to the mission itself of just like.
Well, there's more Allenby and more generals in the movie cut.
Yeah.
None of which is there.
Yeah.
Right. At no point, you as you say, you see these soldiers. They come in. They're like, it's time to go. Yeah. You never get that scene of like, all right, men.
The army will break camp and move out into the desert. The men will carry water for 2 days only. I repeat, 2 days only. Any questions?
And our destination, sir?
For the moment, unknown. Very well, we march in 1 hour.
It's time to go, you know. The section in Beersheba is largely the same, I would say, with the belly dance and a lot of that spy stuff. Some different coverage of Daniel Craig and the spy, who you see, and at one point clearly recognizes Indy during the belly dance sequence and tells Daniel Craig that. There's some coverage missing. Ismet Bey, the colonel, does not have his line where he says,
"Most worthy, I will treasure this,"
which is actually a close-up, so maybe it was shot as an insert later. And then I think the biggest thing that shocked us with the ending, we knew, of course, that Catherine Zeta-Jones is the one who's going to flip the switch. But it's a completely different set. There's a completely different set where the fuse, the detonators are.
Yeah.
And there are many scenes there throughout, right? With the Colonel and with Daniel Craig and Catherine Zeta-Jones. And they play a lot of the same beats. You know, Catherine Zeta-Jones, like, it's not safe for you here, you need to leave, and all of that. The story is there, but it's a completely different setting.
Yeah.
And then in the shootout, Indy shoots Catherine Zeta-Jones just like he does in the final. He's going to shoot her again, and just like in the final, Daniel Craig gets the machine gun and provides cover. But in this version, he tells her, go below the wells, and she runs off. And then Daniel Craig is killed by a horse in a rather funny thing with, I forget the Australian's name, but the sort of main Australian guy jumps his horse over, kills Daniel Craig, and then three of them, the Australian, Indy, and Kasim, chase Catherine Zeta-Jones by following her blood trail.
Yeah.
There's this thing where there's blood on the ground, and they're chasing through the city because they don't know where these detonators are.
Yeah.
And they find her again at this set that you've never seen. It's an outdoor set. And there's sort of a standoff, and then both Indy and the Australian fire their gun.
Yeah.
And she goes down, and it's sort of like, I think the idea was that it's not clear which of them killed her, which is interesting because in this version there's a scene missing that's rather key. Indy and Catherine Zeta-Jones do not go to the well the night before and do not kiss.
You are so beautiful.
I know.
This is not what we should be doing.
No.
It's not professional.
No, it's not. Delicious. It's like the water.
Yeah.
There is no romantic connection between them at all.
Yeah.
The scene prior to that, where in the version you've seen, he says,
but there must be more to my role than entertaining a bunch of Turks.
There is. Well of Abraham, 1 hour. Be careful.
Meet me at the well of Abraham. He actually says, I'll tell you tomorrow what's going on.
Yeah.
I'll see you tomorrow. And he leaves.
Yeah.
And when we went back in the international version, we saw that shot is the exact shot that's in there now. They've just redubbed the dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to what we wanted to talk about, which is we knew, of course, that the fight was reshot.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that had to have been reshot or added very close to production.
Yeah, and it's interesting thinking about where the room is, with the switch and everything, and how many scenes are there. And when I would watch it, and then especially when I watched The Light Horseman, to me, I thought that was almost a reference or whatever. It's because the rooms look a little similar. It's kind of a similar idea, whatever. But now seeing the original version, the switches are almost outside, they're kind of on the side of a wall. And so it's interesting that that was the case, and so much does take place in the second room. Now, we'd previously been told, and we assumed that the fight was kind of the only piece of added photography done. But it seems very clear that there was extensive is maybe not the right word, but they definitely shot a lot of footage, potentially for a week or a few days, whatever.
They probably could have done it in a day, but for example, in the version that exists now, Catherine Zeta-Jones, after she runs off, gets on a horse and rides away. There's absolutely no reason in this cut for her to get on a horse. It wouldn't make no sense to repurpose the footage, so that had to have been shot in such a way to sort of explain her escape.
Yeah.
And actually, as I think about that now, I actually do think that shot occurs in an alleyway or somewhere where there might not be any action in the background. She runs in, which is where she runs in the show.
Yeah.
And then they matched it to a wall or something and had her get on the horse and ride off.
Absolutely.
Daniel Craig, of course. And now I don't want to go back and look at this because again, we saw him die. So that means his leaving that part of the scene has to be shot.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe with a double. We'll have to look. Maybe it's not him. But the whole idea of them chasing Daniel Craig is an addition.
Yeah. And I think there's a big change too is that Daniel Craig in the finished movie comes off as his arrogance coupled with his ignorance kind of leads to this disaster happening. The Turkish general seems to be almost savvy to we need to be better prepared, we need to be warned off, and Daniel Craig's character is almost yeah, we're superior, we don't need to worry about anything, it's fine. And in this movie, in this version, it's not as clear about that. Daniel Craig's a little cocky, but he's in on the whole spy thing. He kind of knows stuff's going down, and the definition of each of the characters was less than what we ultimately have, I feel like.
And actually, I would also say it's almost like Daniel Craig and the Turkish colonel are more at odds in this version. They're not even really aligned. Whereas in the final, because of what you say, where Craig is sort of insisting, and he's we're not going to give you reinforcements. It's much more clear that they're sort of on the same side. They just don't get along, right? Versus here, one could be forgiven for being I'm not really sure what the relationship between the Turkish and the German army is. I'm not even sure why he's here. Because the scene when the guy in the final version says,
You will go to Beersheba. On the way, you will check every yard of our line. I am reassigning you to be my head of intelligence, and I'm sending you to Beersheba. Yes, sir. From Beersheba, you will report to me personally on whether more troops are needed to hold it.
Beersheba has no need of extra troops, General. She has the greatest ally of all, the desert.
That's not in it at all, and it's not in the international version either.
Yeah.
So the first time that scene's in there is in the long version. Now, I don't think Daniel Craig returned 2 years later, so I think that must have been shot around that time. But it again, all these things are sort of missing. The scene at the well is a great example. It's just gone. So that had to have been shot maybe that weekend, or once they saw this cut. I maybe the note was, I'm not feeling enough of a connection between those characters.
Yeah.
We need, and her betrayal needs to sort of mean more.
Yeah.
So why don't we have them have a little more of a reconciliation before she betrays him? Because right now they're kind of at odds throughout, and then she dances, and then he's like, okay, cool, you can dance, and then I'll see you tomorrow. They never really feel like they're allied.
No.
Whereas with the added scene, it's in that scene, it feels like certainly she's playing him, but on first watch, you could be like, okay, they've put their troubles behind them, and now they're working together. They're on the same team. They're spies. They're working together. And that, in the next scene, when he trusts her, it feels a little more earned.
Yeah.
Right? So I get the notes.
Then it makes a twist, too, of like, not only did she betray him, but then he even had one over on her the whole time. And it hits it a lot harder that way. And I think it's so smart. I think really what watching this hammered in for me was that the way the show was produced, we'd heard about they would sometimes go back and shoot new footage. They would sometimes do a lot of inserty kind of shots to flesh out stuff. But it seems much more like they would do a rough cut. They would see what was working, what wasn't working. They would then go back and film sometimes whole new scenes, like whole new, story beats, whole new whatever, to like flesh out these moments even more. So it's like must have been baked into these actors' contracts just to be like, we have our principal photography, and then you're going to guaranteed to come back for a week or whatever to film additional stuff should we need it. And it felt much more like this evolving amalgamous process of like, we're good. And we're not saying like they're making it up as they go, but it's just like they are molding slowly and making sure that it's the best quality product they can find.
Well, I get, watching this version, I kind of get, so let's assume it's pretty faithful to Darabont's script.
Yeah.
I kind of get what he's going for. It's like kind of writing a spy thriller in the desert, and it's really focused on the espionage of it and that element.
Yeah.
And, the final movie is a lot more like The Light Horseman. In other words, a bit more of a depiction of the battle and the history.
And it feels bigger in scope, too. Like, as you say, this one's like, Indy, he's a spy, he's got a couple other spies with him, whatever, but that's it. In the final version that we see in the movie, and then I think in the international version as well, there's a sense of like, this is important for the war. Like, the whole war is like hinging on this moment. It feels big. On the list of like movies you show your family, it's like this one, it's Hawkmen, it's these movies that have these like grandiose scopes to them. Not really as present in the original original version of the episode. The final battle is still a big battle. Like I don't think they reshot much. Well,
most of that is from The Light Horseman anyway.
Light Horseman stuff.
But I will say, Daredevil's of the Desert in its final form. Some people have maybe said it has a little bit of a slower pace, and that's true. But you do care about those Australian guys by the end of that battle, like in a way that doesn't really play here. And there's the line of Dex still gets shot and. He has that line at the end, his horse made it first to the trenches. It doesn't quite read as strongly as when you have a couple of those extra scenes with those guys.
Yeah.
And the same thing with sort of Lawrence of Arabia, the scene of them, as we knew, the scene of them going out to the desert and having that moment together was added later. And that scene brings a lot of the stakes. He's the one who says, what are their chances? Non-existent if you fail, right? Play up, play the game. Like, that's all in that scene. And again, he's in the episode, and he's a strong presence in it. He has a slightly different introduction where he's like Beersheba, a city founded thousands of years ago by Abraham, and he's obscured by the sun, and you don't quite know who he is. And then Indy says Ned, and has that same thing. And that was in the blooper reel too, by the way. Yeah. Flannery was having fun with it. He was like, Ned?
Ned?
Ned? And he was enjoying that.
Absolutely. It was a very interesting experience because it's you're seeing a very unfinished form for the episode. Like, I'll be curious if we're ever able to watch this beginning to end, the international version, and kind of see the progression of it before that middle stage before it gets to the final version of the made-for-TV movie.
Yeah. I'm sure we will, because that aired. I'm sure that there's a copy.
It aired, and but it's the way the show is made is just so antithetical to television at the time, and even television today. At that time, you had an 8-day production schedule. You showed up, you did your work, you left, and that was it. Like, you never went back. You never, and that created a environment where TV was streamlined, where it was an assembly line process. Each episode became kind of the same because it guaranteed that you could complete it. Whereas with Indy, it seemed much more like they were given 3 weeks to shoot principal photography, and then there was baked in time to go back and do more photography for a lot of these episodes. And they were shooting little pickup shots here at the ranch or elsewhere around the world, and just doing all these things to compile them together and make this finished form of an episode of this. And it's much more cinematic in that nature, not the normal TV process.
Yeah, and a collaborative process. George and Rick are watching these cuts, and then giving obviously these feedback, and that was then going to go to set, and they were going to reshoot. And we've heard this story, and now that I've seen it, I kind of want to listen again to the Simon Windsor interview and the Ben interview, we've heard the different perspectives on the story a bit. And I wonder if I will take that differently now, having seen the footage myself. I think I was really just shocked by how different it was.
Me too.
That reshoot was in a completely different set.
Yeah.
And that meant new footage for large portions of the episode. Because, of course, you have to establish the set. You have to make everything make sense.
Yeah.
Everything that takes place by the detonators now has to be on this set, as opposed to the other set, right?
Yeah, and obviously this was 30 plus years ago at this point. The production team they might remember the big memorable slugfest thing, so they might not remember it just like shooting ordinary scenes. Totally understandable, but it was just really shocking to see just how much they would have needed to shoot later. Just really quite fascinating. If we ever get a chance to speak with Simon again, we should definitely bring it up and be like, do you remember doing this? Was this stuff in your shoots?
Well, now it's funny because now I'm thinking about that scene at the well. Yeah. He says, "You're so beautiful," and she goes, "I know."
You are so beautiful.
I know.
And I feel like there's a "I know" joke in Radioland Murders as well.
You really are the only guy for me.
I know. You speak.
I know.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, I think George was making those jokes. I think he wrote that because he was mocking it. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone else did that. But it's interesting that they're in both.
Well, and I think to the bigger note too is that a lot of these additional photography moments was a time to stitch references into episodes. Particularly when you get to the made-for-TV movie area, that was a time where they could kind of add in elements that really, they could hit the nail on the head a lot more in terms of the themes they wanted to hit in the show, the themes they wanted to hit in this larger movie, references to stuff that came before, stuff that came later. Seems very much like that was not necessarily there from the beginning. It was stuff they added in as they went along. And some of that might be George, who knows. But
and the episodes are heavily, they're looped for necessity. I mean, so much of the raw audio we heard last night across a number of the things that we watched, a lot of wind, a lot of environmental things. And so, that allows you to tweak performance a little bit and change dialogue a little bit in the post-production process.
Yeah.
And that was really fascinating as well. We talked about, is there anything, I think we covered Beersheba. I mean, it was just really exciting to get to watch it. Lucas Seastrom, I think, came in and watched it with us, or another guest on the podcast. Lucas was with us this weekend.
Very special, very special.
It was a great time. Hopefully we get our hands on an international cut of Beersheba. We could do that. We can make some comparison videos and sort of point out where some of these changes are. I'm really fascinated by the complete lack of General Allenby scenes which run throughout the episode. And very curious about when and how those were shot, put back in.
Yeah, after that, spent a bit more time with Ben, but it was basically around time to get to the screening. So we...
And let's describe for them this screening. So in the morning when we went to the theater, and we forgot to say, they showed us some demo reels, which sounded and looked amazing in the theater at Skywalker Sound.
Yeah, we did.
JT, great projectionist who helped us out. Thank you, JT, if you're listening. And we knew this is the theater where tonight Attack of the Hawkmen director's cut is going to screen in a DCP, high definition presentation, and that Ben had invited many people to the screening, including employees and local people. And so, about it was at 7 o'clock, about 6 o'clock, we come down to that main atrium area, and it's getting crowded. I mean, this is an event, and a lot of people. We met John Goodson, a model maker from ILM, Matthew Wood briefly, number of people from sort of the stable of Lucasfilm ILM talent were there. And forgive me if others' names that I don't have on the top of my tongue.
Dana Mulligan later on.
But people were there, of course, to support Ben, but also I think out of perhaps curiosity.
Yeah.
These things are very rare. This has been shown one other time, 10 years ago. And one of the scheduling things here is this theater is used for Oscar for-year consideration screenings quite regularly, and so finding an open evening was a challenge, and then this was one. So this theater gets busy a lot. But I was also happy to see some young people. I don't know exactly how young, but maybe teenagers, kids,
quite a bit.
who I think were seeing this for the first time. We're seeing Young Indiana Jones for the first time, and really took to it. And Actually, we were able to record Ben's, both his intro and his Q&A, which we're going to provide to you to listen as part of this episode.
Yeah.
And you'll hear some of this, and you'll I don't know if you can hear the questions, but you'll get a sense of what the questions were, and some of them were from some of these kids, and that was really, really wonderful to see. So we have this screening again, beautiful theater, perfect sound. You know, JT was telling us about how George wanted the speakers and kind of designed the theater, or at least gave his specifications of what he wanted the theater to be. We sat in the morning in 3 chairs, one of which is George's chair. There was some discussion about exactly which one it was George's chair, but we sat in all of them just in
definitely,
case.
because what they showed us in the morning, just as a quick side, was like kind of a highlights that they show to visiting people, basically. So it's like, it is clips of Star Wars that, you know, you see the raw footage, then you see the finished version, sound effects, that is to say. And then they showed us a kind of a Skywalker sound. I guess maybe you could call it a demo reel, I suppose, but it's like a bunch of side-by-side comparisons with some big name films, seeing like all the various layers that get added to it. Particularly, I think the Creed one was particularly memorable, I would say. Like it really went into detail about just the amount of work that goes into what you would think is a very simple shot, and it's like, no, it's not, of course. And then they showed us just a kind of a collection of clips from big budget films that just highlight ILM's work.
Top Gun Maverick,
Top Gun Maverick,
Legacy,
All Is Lost for
Robert Redford.
Some Star Wars Rogue One was there. Solo, some other things, and then they ended with like 5 minutes from F1 because fantastic film. Why not? But I don't know about you, Daniel. I was getting quite emotional watching Star Wars in that theater.
Oh yeah, my only complaint was I would have loved to see a little of the pod race.
Well, yeah.
Maybe Jango Fett's seismic charges. That was my only thing. Was like I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, to be able to sit in that theater and imagine what it was like, watching The Phantom Menace for the first time, or Revenge of the Sith for the first time, Attack of the Clones. That thought was really moving to me, and getting a hint of it through what we saw.
Absolutely.
Was very exciting.
Absolutely. So that was in the morning, and then we came back for the evening when we had our screening after we had spent basically the whole day in that building. We came back. We walked down to the basement theater. Good turnout, I would say, maybe 100 people.
Pretty full. I mean, I don't know how many people that theater sits, but it was quite crowded. Again, a lot of Lucasfilm people, friends of Ben. We of course, Lucas Seastrom and crew was there.
Yeah.
And we attacked the Hawkmen, and I don't know. I know Ben, of course, mentioned it on our show, but this version that he's done includes basically as much deleted footage as he could source. He says it's pretty close to the shooting script at this point, and then a mix of qualities. So it does include the HD footage that he was able to scan, and then of course much of the other deleted footage is from VHS or editorial formats, not quite as high quality as the.
Yeah, it sounded like he kind of compiled this around stuff he had access to, and by the sound of it too, it was even a little bit different than the version he showed 10 years ago.
It is, because I think 10 years ago he did not have the HD material in the cut, for sure. I don't know when he had it relative to the screening, but he said he kind of incorporated the HD footage for us, which is wonderful.
Yeah, truly. I mean, we started watching it, the introduction, he was very kind. I mean, he really highlighted our podcast and said, this had really reinvigorated his interest in the show and his love of the show. I got emotional there too, frankly. I mean, that was quite a touching moment. That was really wonderful. And he gave a rundown very similar to what he has talked about on our podcast about the episode, and then we started, and very early on. I mean, we can go through maybe some of the highlights.
Talk through the things that were added or different.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my favorites comes very early in the episode, where in the version you've seen, Indy is writing his letter to Dad, and he's kind of, catching the audience and us up on what's going on, and they're in spy school, and you see some of that. And then what's great is you see him put the letter in the mailbox, which was great. And then they go to, and Ben, I think, had described this to us, but they go to basically an officers club.
Yeah.
But what I loved was Indy's like, Remy, we got to go to this place. And Remy's like, no, we should meet women, because that's what he's always talking about.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, this is where all the spies hang out. And the French commander that they end up working for is in this club in the scene. And some British, and they get some ridicule, and there's some back and forth, and they end up having to leave this club, and pointing out just how bad of a reputation the Belgian spies have. And then they're out this like, let's just say a similar establishment to where Remy and Indy went in Demons of Deception. And there are these, ladies outside kind of beckoning them in, and Remy's like, let's go. And Indy's like, no, we have work to do. And Remy's like, no, I'm going. And he goes in and he greets this woman like he knows her. He says her name, like Suzette or whatever. And Indy's just like rolling his eyes like, Remy, And I just love that runner, and this is Remy's kind of his last episode, or one of his last episodes.
Yeah.
And then we see Indy go steal the papers, which actually, by the way, I liked, because later, when, and this was in the original, when Fokker gets his sort of bribe letter, it's on the stationery.
Oh.
Which maybe I only noticed because there's a big screen, but
so Indy forged
no,
that?
it's just that's French intelligence stationary, right?
Sure,
and I mean, like it's just a nice little piece of connective tissue that what would authenticate this letter to Fokker, which is probably funny for us to think about this, but the stationary proves it's from French intelligence, right?
Well, I mean, what's interesting too is how many lines that still exist in the movie version are kind of payoffs or references to stuff that had been deleted.
Well, Remy comes back and says,
"You should have stuck with me last night. That bar has improved since basic training."
Which is a reference to what we saw, but it's just sort of a throwaway.
Yeah, and he says, "You should have come with me last night." Indy. And from there, it
a lot of moments.
A lot of moments. It's hard to really track them all. There's a lot of moments more with kind of the flight school, the flight squadron once you're there, and the emotional arc kind of bobs a bit back and forth from like very dark to very light, I would say.
Yes. A lot more Charles.
A lot more of the squad's mascot. You see a lot more of the lion, which I had kind of forgotten was even in it until as we saw one of the outtakes. When Ben was showing us the outtakes, the lion was like gnawing on his trainer's leg. I'm like, that's scary. But a lot more of that. A lot more flying footage too, and. But as we get into more of the,
there's the, and he talked about this on the show.
Yeah.
Indy's first mission. There's a whole sequence with the trenches, largely made up with footage from Trenches of Hell.
Yeah.
But there's new stuff of the Germans sort of seeing the planes from the trenches and kind of sounding the alarm.
Yeah.
And then they go to ground, and then, which is there, the anti-aircraft guns start going off.
Yeah.
So you're connecting a little bit more, perhaps, the ground war with the air war,
and kind of what the purpose is of these these photographs.
Yes, because that's what they're taking pictures of the German lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so that's there. And I will say the Trenches of Hell footage is fairly obvious.
Yeah.
I suspect had they really continued that direction, perhaps they would have used other takes or found ways to obscure that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I remember. Again, just lots of bits of dialogue.
Yeah, small extensions of scenes, just bits of dialogue, bits of moments, again, more with the flight squadron. But then, we get into kind of the biggest change, which comes with essentially.
Oh no! Wait, well, I don't want to skip that far ahead. So the big one I remember is when they go. The Red Baron stuff is pretty unchanged. But when they go to Paris to get Charles, that scene is extended.
Yeah.
You get a lot more with the can-can. There's more dialogue, especially with Charles and Indy. And then there's this scene that's, I suspect, if we pull out the script, is probably from Matthew's script, because it feels like Matthew, if I can say that. Charles is driving Indy home after this night of partying.
Yeah.
And there's like a girl asleep on Charles' shoulder. Where she is. And they have this conversation about war.
Yeah.
And what the future of war is going to be with aircraft, but also like the nature of war. And and Charles, it's kind of a dark scene because he's like, we men lose their lives so that other men can, build something worthwhile or something like that. And then he goes, that's the glory.
Yeah.
And it's haunting and it's scary and it's very unsettling.
Yeah. And like, what is it? Like right after he says that, they almost run into a horse on the road.
Yes.
Like, it's a little nail on the head there, but it's, you know, interesting scene, and it's then you know, as it was established, the next morning was when Charles and Red Baron were going to have their duel. Bit more footage there, I think. There was a weird shot that, you know, undoubtedly, I mean, Ben was doing what he could with it, but it was Charles was about to take off, and you can kind of see the digital propeller.
Yeah, it's like a matted-in propeller. It's not in the right place.
It was kind of bobbing around the screen, like almost like it was auto-populated, but it never quite matched where it was meant to go. But you know, you do what you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else there do we see?
Before we get to the middle section.
Yeah.
Well, there's more at sort of the end of the Lafayette section. There's more scenes where, you know, the head guy comes back, Baron, and like they talk about some of the guys who don't make it back, and there's like almost an extended funeral sequence.
Yeah.
And I will say that I think it's a good place to say this. The music is very different.
Yeah.
Ben takes out a lot of the music and lets sort of the sound effects take over, as one might understand.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he's using different music. I would say in general, he subdues the piece.
Yeah.
Like most of the music he puts in as replacement, or even when he removes music, it tends to subdue the tone a bit.
Yeah.
Where the original maybe was a little more had a little more dynamism in the range. Sometimes it was a little over the top, sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was threatening or thrilling, and it was really being hammered home by the music.
Yeah.
And he tends to pull that out, and as a result, the film sort of emotionally evens out a little bit, and introduces a little bit more suspense in a lot of scenes where you're not hearing any music and you're just waiting to sort of find out, like, okay, what's gonna, you know, what danger is gonna come, and the music's not really telling you. So that farewell though is then played over diegetic music not a harmonica, but I don't know the name of the instrument, like a French instrument of the period.
Oh, the accordion.
The accordion,
yeah. That was interesting too, because it's played by I think a 12-year-old or something. It seems like a very young boy, and I'm sure that was purposeful because it's meant to imply that yes, now there's a new generation, so to speak, that's going to come in and also just die in the air. So it's much more somber there at the end.
Yeah, it's not quite as heroic.
No. Because I would argue, the finished version is quite you're on a fun romp, essentially. And there's moments of somberness and, reflection, but it's a very thrilling episode. And this one was trying, I think, a bit more to be a somber piece on the nature of war.
So then in the middle section, we got more HD footage. There's quite a bit of HD footage when Charles drops Indy off at the base, and then Indy gets his briefing. A lot of that is in the new HD.
Yeah.
And then the biggest sort of continuity change is the middle section. After Indy has his mission and he gets in the plane, we get an extended sequence of the Zeppelin battle that Ben mentioned, and I don't think I realized that they don't have a machine gun, which is brought up, and that Charles intends to take on the Zeppelin with a pistol.
Well, that's what I found so surprising. When we say Zeppelin battle, it implies our heroes are accosted by this, the enemy's force, and it's no. Charles just sees a Zeppelin and says I'm gonna go play chicken with this guy.
And he's no, and he says something it's too good of a target to pass up.
Yeah.
Just attacks her.
Yeah, and he's you don't have a machine gun, and then Charles just pulls out a handgun and is I got this.
But the Zeppelin part was cool because they had that same gondola that they used in the opening.
Yeah.
And they had machine guns mounted on it. There's some cool footage with the German soldiers firing from the Zeppelin.
It looks great. And you could argue, too, in showing how vulnerable they were, it kind of sets up the need to develop new flying tech later on in the episode. So I get why it's there. It also, it's not a plot hole. It's a logic leap that it never occurred to me that planes at the time were not fast-moving vehicles. Yeah. And France to Germany is a long distance. And they would have needed multiple nights in order to do it. And but in the broadcast version, it's essentially overnight, and then you're there, and it's a very short amount of time, really. And
we cut out a day because what happens is that after the battle, the Zeppelin, they crash, and they don't know where they are. Yeah. They discover they're in Belgium. There's a girl with a shotgun threatening them, and they're trying to reason with her, and she's you scared my cows. There are these cows.
Yeah.
And
being referred to as an Irish girl. She didn't have an Irish accent.
The actress was Irish.
The actress was probably Irish, but But no, she was playing a Belgian. And there's realization they need to fix the plane if they can. And so Indy goes into town. Belgian.
The girl says, "Go speak to the white lady."
Speak to white lady.
She goes, "Well, sure." She's like, "You must pray," and he's like, "I don't think prayer is gonna have." She's like, "No, go to the church, pray, and if the white lady sees you, she'll help." And she gives him like a flower.
White lady being a callback to where Remy left in the beginning of the broadcast version as well. He gets assigned to a cafe.
Bedouin, you're going home.
I am?
Are you familiar with the Café Noir in Brussels?
Yes.
You are its new proprietor. All our spies will report to you. You will be our main contact with the White Lady, which is the code name for the Belgian underground.
Café Noir in Belgium and is liaising with the White Lady?
Yeah, he's the main contact.
Main point of contact. So this is a payoff for that. Now, one thing we speculated was that potentially if they had...
Well, Ben said, I was expecting Remy to show up.
Yeah.
And in the script, and he didn't.
And I would imagine if they had decided to go more in this longer form direction, that probably would have been something they would have addressed. Like, it's hard to imagine George not...
Well, maybe if they had done more episodes, it's possible they had planned...
No, what I mean is, like, if the Family Channel had been like, we want 2 75-minute episodes for this, and you are going to go do some additional photography, I can imagine that being the case. I think just like early on, they were just like, we need to cut this down dramatically to 90 minutes. Let's cut out this middle section, because ultimately... And
it's a full section. Indy goes to the church. He's chased by soldiers. We see it. He puts on the glasses. He's praying in the church, trying to hide from the soldiers.
Church.
Yes. And it's all in HD.
Yeah.
And then after the soldiers leave, a nun comes and finds him, and there's a scene with him and a priest and a nun, and they're sort of discussing what to do. He explains the problem.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we have everything you need, but how do we get there? And she's like, well, we need to bless the fields. Yeah. And they have this kind of procession like you might see in The Godfather of the priest and the nuns with crosses and crucifix and all these tarps and stuff. The soldiers are kind of mocking them. And they go out to the field and they use all this to fix the plane.
Yeah.
And Indy is using a crutch in this scene, I think, to try to sell that he's the reason why he's not fighting in the war. He's injured. And he tosses that crutch to Charles. And that's Charles's crutch that he has later.
That's
where the crutch comes from.
Hey, look at that. Interesting.
Because he just has one later in the episode. It's not really clear.
And yeah, it's an interesting bit. I mean, and again, another interesting thing to point out is like Ben had talked to us about how his original edit that he did in early 90s. So I think he labeled it as like 146 minutes or something.
Oh, well, he said it was 146 pages.
Pages, okay.
So that's what he said. Okay.
I thought he gave us a minute count, but what I was speculating was there might be even now be footage that he just didn't have access to.
Possible.
And as he told us, he's kind of compiling this from stuff that he has available to him. But so they fix the plane. They go back off on their mission, and then it kind of picks up where we see it in the finished episode. Indy gets dropped off, and then tries to go get Fokker.
There's tiny things.
There are
bits of dialogue. Interestingly, I think that Max acknowledges that Indy's late, but there's a line that was probably added later where he says there's been a change in schedule, which explains in the broadcast cut why Fokker's leaving a day early.
Yeah.
But probably actually shouldn't be there because Indy's now late, and that's why Fokker's supposed to be leaving at that time, which is established in dialogue. And then the rest of it, again, with tiny bits of dialogue, there's a couple extra lines with Fokker about the Americans.
Yeah, in terms of like big story differences, not a whole lot changes. Small moments, when Indy is trying to convince Fokker to switch sides, he also throws out an offer to say that like the Americans would reward you handsomely, essentially, if you came over to their side. And I think the intention is probably to be like Indy's so hell-bent on completing the mission, he's willing to lie. Like there's no, he wouldn't have been able to make that offer at the time. But I think the way it kind of reads is it feels a little off. It feels like, oh, the Americans talked to Indy at some point? I don't know.
Yeah, it's unclear.
It's unclear, and I'm sure that would have been finessed if they had had more time. Like, if they decided to leave that in there. There's one funny shot that Daniel and I like a lot, which is...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is like the very end, a scene which is in the finished version where Indy is changing and like he's
putting on the German uniform.
Put on the German uniform, but also he's creating the camera in the locker room. And I think they linger on it a bit longer too. But then he finishes changing, he's about to leave, and then he turns back and he sees that his hat is on the bench, and he has to like run back to grab the hat.
Well, you kind of see him look at it and like think, can I take the hat?
Yeah.
And he grabs it. I mean, it's great. It was a really great hat gag.
It was funny they excised that because it's such a small moment. Like it would have been easy to leave it in. And,
well, I also get the other way though, because without it, when he pulls it out at the end, it's maybe funnier.
Full throttle, no brakes.
Boom. Yeah, like I could see George being like, it's funnier if he pulls the hat out of nowhere.
That's true.
And you haven't been thinking about the hat. Sure. Where now it's like, well, the joke is here. Like this is the joke, but he's not going to leave the hat. You know, it's like, where do you put the joke, right?
But yeah, from there, largely the same. The big thing then that comes at the very end of the episode is that Ben had added a bunch of text cards at the end, along with a photo and an additional shot of Fokker looking over some plane schematics, which is not from the episode. But the idea being that like it kind of tells you where these people went after the real historical figures in the episode. Yes. Particularly interesting, I think, because a lot of historical figures were there that I hadn't realized were actually there. They're not relevant characters particularly, but they were actually based on real historical figures, which was very interesting to see just how much depth and awareness was going into this. And Daniel, you want to say the funniest part of that you really got a kick out of?
Oh, well, yes. So if you've seen like American Graffiti or many historical dramas, based on real people, the style. You see the picture of the person and Anthony Fokker after the war went to America and, did this. They do that for a number of people. And then the last one, it says Indiana Jones. And it says Indiana Jones went off to dubious success as a spy, went to college, and has been getting into misadventures for the last 75 years. Because, of course, when the episode was being made, old Indy, in theory, was still alive.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny because it was unexpected, but actually works really well when you think about it.
Yeah, and the episode also ends with like some gorgeous, just 35mm footage of planes, flying around, and just beautiful way to end it. And that was the end of the episode, and it came up where I guess the total runtime.
It was like 2:08 or something like that.
Yes,
2 hours.
2 hours and 8 minutes. 2 hours and 8 minutes. So it's definitely longer. I'd say 30
minutes,
35, 40 minutes.
It's only a 90-minute movie. It's like 9 minutes or something like that.
And so definitely a lot of new footage was added in there, or a lot of old footage was restored in there, rather.
One thing Ben confirmed, and he did this, you'll hear it in the Q&A as well, Victor Spinetti is an actor who plays the second in command of French intelligence.
No, that is Bedouin's assignment. As for you, Defense, we're not sure where to place you as yet. But for the time being, we'll send you back to the Western Front.
Which is funny because that's a line in Adventures in the Secret Service that he says, the second in command of French intelligence.
The second in command of French intelligence?
Yes, Captain.
Even though he's already met the guy. And in the deleted scene in the Officers Club, he identifies him as the second in command of French intelligence. So that is the character. It's a little, maybe it's unclear, maybe some things get lost in the edit or whatever. But that actor is the same actor who gives him the last part of his briefing in the dark room.
Yeah.
Anthony Fokker usually works at his aircraft factory near Berlin. It is impossible to reach him there because he's closely watched at all times. However, we have discovered that he's shortly to begin a journey to the naval base at Alhorn.
And he explained why. He said there was another actor, and he actually showed us in one of his BTS reels a brief shot of this other actor with a completely different look, wearing a uniform, kind of looked like maybe an Eastern European, but just a completely different look.
Bit of a Joss Ackland in some ways.
Maybe, a rounder, And he didn't go into detail, but basically it was not working. The actor, the performance was not what they wanted. And so Spinetti kind of was like, I'll do it, but in a completely different look.
Yeah.
And so he has different hair and different makeup and a different outfit. And so it is him, and it was done as because they're on the day, it's a last minute thing, they're on a tight schedule. And so it wasn't intended, but Ben felt, and I think rightfully, that he kind of saved the day because he's great in that scene.
Well, truly, like, I had never noticed that.
Well, my mother had, actually. She pointed this out because they watched a lot of British TV and they knew the actor.
Wow.
And they said, well, that's Victor Spinetti. But Victor Spinetti's in the other scene. Why is it Victor Spinetti? Is it supposed to be the same character?
Yeah.
Like, is he changing and coming out and giving the rest of the briefing, you know? And I was like, I don't think so. I feel like I would have heard that.
Yeah. But it's very well done, and like they both the characters are really cool in their own way. So it's just yeah, it was a fun bit of trivia. Never heard about that. No, I don't know.
It was a long day. You know, again, we were graciously invited to come to Lucasfilm the following morning at the Presidio.
Yes.
And got to see that. Thank you guys for that invitation. It was very kind of you.
That was really special as well. I mean, the thing is, you know, Lucasfilm up here is a very sprawling operation. You know, even the ranch, there was areas we weren't able to go to.
Yes.
We were mostly in the tech building. We walked around a few other areas as well, but for the most part, in the tech building. And yet the complex is sprawling. And then there's also this location at the Presidio, which, you know, I guess I had previously thought maybe it was just a building, but it's also like a sprawling complex. And a lot of floors, a lot of people, again, a lot of vintage movie posters.
Yeah.
George is obviously a big fan. What we learned too is each one of these movie posters has a unique frame to them.
Yeah.
And the frame itself is meant to match the movie as much as it can. And professionally framed, you know, really well done. A lot of models in this place. I don't think we're speaking out of turn since they do tours like this all the time, but like there's a lot of, you know, the original models from a lot of these Lucasfilm productions over the years.
One thing that was cool that I loved was the digital printer that they had built, digital scanner, CCD scanner that was used, built by ILM to scan film into the computer. And this particular one I believe it was finished they stopped using it in 1995. But basically from the late 80s, you know, into that period was the way that they would scan.
Well, and they had a plaque beside it to say like what projects had this machine worked on, and Young Indiana Jones was listed, which was very special. There was a few references to Young Indy there, not a lot, but there's a few. There was like a little timeline installation that was there, which apparently we learned Lucas Seastrom really pushed for. It was kind of his project, which was very fun to see. And there was the nice little TV guide with Young Indy on it, and you know, a few other references. There's a good amount of Howard the Duck there, which I'm always happy to see.
Peter got a Howard the Duck hat.
Got a Howard the Duck hat. You know, there is a Lucasfilm store there, as well as a Skywalker Ranch store. These two things are open to the, not to the public, but to the tourists, to the tourists who are there that have been granted supervised entrance.
There was a nice hallway with a Radioland Murders poster in excellent condition.
Yes.
I will say.
Oh yeah.
Pristine Radioland Murders poster.
Absolutely. A lot of posters from Lucasfilm Productions. What was the favorite piece of movie memorabilia you saw there?
Movie memorabilia?
Not movie memorabilia, but like prop, screen use thing, whatever.
Well, a lot of good stuff.
We saw a Yoda that had been used in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
That was really fun. It was one that was used for more of a far away shot. But that was really special.
That was a little overwhelming. I'd have to really sit and think because there was so much.
There was a lot.
And it was really well displayed and well.
Some Star Trek stuff, I'd say maybe that.
Oh yeah, the Enterprise A damaged dish from Star Trek 6.
Star Trek 6. It's massive too. This was like and it was it was
like on the wall,
mounted on the side of a wall of a staircase. That might give you a sense of how big it was. This was maybe.
It's big.
10 by...
I don't know, 12 feet, 10 feet?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there was... I imagine it was used for that battle scene. It was probably never attached to the rest of it. Like, they were probably shooting the saucer.
Absolutely.
Right? And so they had a giant saucer.
Yeah. And that's the... our tour guide, she commented how people are often surprised by that because this is also an ILM building, and ILM has worked on plenty of projects that George Lucas is not identified with.
Right.
And Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, and 6 were ILM projects.
Yes.
I suppose as well
as was Generations and First Contact, and the pilot for Next Generation. Which there's a whole story there that I probably am not an authority enough on to comment, but I believe has a lot to do with why ILM did not do the visual effects on Young Indy.
Right.
But again, I'm not enough of an authority to tell that whole story. But yeah, that probably is, ironically, something that stands out.
Yeah, I would say it was fun, a surprise to see they had the whaling ship from Star Trek 4.
That was cool.
That was surprising because it's like, yeah, I mean, you
wouldn't think about it. And obviously ILM did that, and we're like, well, it's done. Like, we don't use this ship for anything else.
Yeah. So that was very cool. Some matte paintings. They weren't. Were they originals?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so there was a matte painting.
The ET matte painting was there.
There was a matte painting of Star Trek 4 again, like the view out of Starfleet Command.
Yes.
Down onto the bay, and that was really gorgeous. And a lot of other matte paintings as well. You see the original Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic Park.
Well, a model of it, a scale model of it.
But the version they scanned.
Yes.
Healthy amount of Jurassic Park presence, actually.
It was good Jurassic Park stuff. No, it was a beautiful building. It seems like a wonderful place to work. Everyone we met was very kind and gracious. It felt really welcomed.
Yes.
I will say, sort of reflecting on the whole experience, I was incredibly excited to visit Skywalker Ranch. But I think what surprised me was how collaborative the trip felt, and how it felt like, we're sitting with Ben, we're looking at these, footage, and at one point he had a sign up. Someone came in and he's like, she said, "I'll let you get back to work," and it really did feel like we were working, like we were going through this footage and looking through these things, and it felt like a work day, like we did a day of work at Skywalker Ranch, which in some ways is more special perhaps than taking a tour.
Absolutely.
And obviously, we were able to sit with Ben in his office and interview him, and 2 cameras, and it looks really nice. I'm very happy with the visuals and how it turned out, and the stories he shared. There's a couple of surprises in there for sure. Very excited to be working on the film, to say we shot part of our film at Skywalker Ranch.
Very special, very special. And obviously, again, thank you for everyone who helped make this trip possible. Ben was obviously the big champion of that, but there was plenty of other people there as well.
Staff at Skywalker
Ranch, and even just the people that we had a number of people come up to us and just say we were doing a great job on this podcast.
Yeah, this guy Sean, who I believe reached out to Ben initially because of our interview, I think is what he was saying. Because he had heard our podcast and heard about this cut, and reached out to say he was really intrigued by that. And
he had written a book. I think that's out now.
He's writing one. He's working on a book.
Okay, I thought it was out.
That he's interviewing Ben for.
Yeah.
But just this idea that he had heard this, and it prompted him to reach out to Ben, and Ben, connected with him, and it's really a wonderful.
It's very special. Very special.
Wonderful thing.
And obviously we hope it won't be our last time up there, but if it is, I think this was one that we'll remember for the rest of our lives.
No better way. No better way.
Just such a beautiful
time machine to 1999 is the only other way I want to go.
Well, yeah, but in lieu of that. But Daniel, thanks. Maybe we should just wrap
I think thank you guys. Again, now you're going to hear a Q&A, or we hope you'll enjoy this recording from Skywalker Ranch.
So you're welcome to go. I know it's late, but if we'll take a few minutes if anybody has any burning questions of some sort. Did we mention Bob Edwards, by the way? We did. Okay. Sorry. Thanks, Bob. I just want to make sure we don't miss somebody. Oh, no film is made alone. Sure. Anybody have any thing they want to ask? Right here, Tim?
The music score seemed really lush. Were all episodes that deep?
Yes, the music score, he said it's really lush. Were they all that deep? Yes. Well, at the time in the early 90s, we still were thinking about traditional symphonic scores for the features. This was made in a very traditional style, both filmically and sonically. And that was the Perth Orchestra, Perth, Australia, for this particular film, and it varied. Some recordings done in Munich. The 2 composers were Larry Rosenthal and Joel McNeely. They kind of alternated episodes. And yeah, it was a great symphonic, kind of Eric Wolfgang Korngold, Max Steiner, especially this one. I wanted it to be sound like a Warner Brothers film from 1942. And Joel did a great job coming up with, leitmotifs for the different characters and all of that. Sure. Any other back there? Yes, Dan.
Yeah, where was it filmed?
Well, most of it was filmed in and around Prague in the Czech Republic, where we had all the availability of historic buildings and streets. Things like the Zeppelin gondola was really just a Czech streetcar, filmed at night, with dollies moving back and forth across it to make it look like it's flying. At Barrendorf Studios, which had been the Nazi studios during World War II, we're still there. We occupied those. They were actually the Zeppelin base there at the end as well.
Where all the explosions were done too?
Well, yes. All the pyrotechnics headed up by Dave Beavis of the pyrotechnics team. All the explosions, full size. Well, there were some miniatures at the end. Some of the hangars blowing up were miniatures, as well as the giant bomber itself was a 12-foot wingspan miniature. So it was a lot of heat on the set. You could feel it. Way back there?
In the first half, when he throws the soldier off the car, was that the Wilhelm Scream from Star Wars?
Yes, of course. That time we were still traditionally putting the Wilhelm in every movie. So we did nothing like a Wile E. Coyote type stunt of a guy flying into a haystack. It just seemed perfect for that. Yes. Right over here, that's Bobby, I think. Yeah.
So much historical elements to this. It was incredible, especially at the end, to see all those people from real life. Can you talk just a little bit about the research element of the show and how that worked in with the writing and the characters?
The research element, well, it's part of a team. The writers themselves, they were all astute and well educated. Many of them British, writers. And had a grasp of history, because I think history was taught more completely. People were more absorbed in it in the 20th century than they are today. And so there was a general knowledge of politics, the geopolitical situation, what caused the wars. And then each writer who was assigned something in the timeline would do research in part of the writing. I think a certain set of actual historical characters were put on a list. We'd love to do a story about this person or that person, and that would be researched in part by the research team at Lucasfilm. And then I think the individual writers did a lot of it. I know I read up a lot on World War I. I had an interest in it anyways to start with, aviation. And it just took schoolwork, really, to do that and try to be faithful to it. One thing I wanted to do, it was not part of the style of the show, but was to put the epilogue on a show where you did kind of the American Graffiti style ending where you reminded the audience who they had just seen. Because it isn't evident along the way that, one of those guys is Hermann Goering, for instance. They say, hey, Goering, what do you think about it? But I think that goes over your head. It's not a familiar word. And that sort of thing, because almost all the pilots had real stories behind them and history. So, yes, I can't quite see who that is. Oh, Sean Chang, all the way from Washington, from Congress.
2 quick questions. Of all the scenes you added back in, which one's your favorite that you're glad is back in there? And the second one is, of all the wonderful character actors who play supporting roles, was there a particular favorite one that you like working with, or favorite performance in it?
In terms of the character actors, John Pertwee, who played the white-haired German general, was a lot of fun to be with. He was quite a character, great sense of humor. He was known for being one of the Doctor Who's in that succession. And he also played Guzzle Gorridge, or what was his name? Wuzzle Gorridge, well-known child, like a Sesame Street character in England. Wowzel Gummidge?
I think it's Wuzzle Gummidge.
Okay. I didn't know who that was when he was introduced to me, so I didn't react. But I found out later from the British film crew that they were all real excited to have him there. He was good. He was versatile. Victor Spinetti, who came to the day to save us by playing 2 parts in the show, because another actor just was having troubles, and he was both the French and head of French intelligence, as well as he played the man that briefed Indy before his mission in the dark room. He was on all the Beatles films, and he was a kind of known as a comic more than anything else, I think, character actor. In terms of my favorite scenes I put back, well, that's pretty hard to say. I had, it rambles a bit because they're all back in there. I've always wanted the Zeppelin sequence in it because that was another aspect of World War I aviation that I wanted to have the pleasure of putting on, sharing with the audience. That was not in the final the cut of the show that went on the air. And the hydrogen factory, that was a made-up, improvised scene. They walk through what looks like a big factory, and they talk about, don't line up one of your cigars in here, Herr Fokker. That was done at lunchtime. We'd used the entrance to the Czech waterworks for just some trucks driving in. It's supposed to be the Zeppelin base. And while I was waiting for that shot to be set up, I went inside the waterworks, which had been built in the 1920s, and it was this great vaulted concrete metropolis kind of interior with all these water pools in it. And I just went back and I said, we've got to do a scene and just have our actors walk through there and talk about hydrogen. Everybody was so tired that they could not do it without laughing. He says, a hydrogen factory. And then we would just laugh. Because you know how tired you get. It was toward the end of shooting. And that seemed funny. It's not funny here, but it was then. But the fact that we were a little ahead of schedule and Rick let us improvise a whole scene, which added some production value and fun for the actors, because we just gave them some sketchy things to say, and they played along with it.
And how long was shooting?
Shooting for this principal photography was 32 days, something like that. Slightly longer than some of the episodes because there was so much physical, so many locations and sets in this. It goes all over the place, And then we spent another year trying to figure out how to do the aviation part of it. What had happened was we were going to use a few actual planes in Alabama, some replicas, by an entrepreneur who was a wealthy man who had built lots of replicas of some of the famous World War I planes, but they had modern instrumentation and brakes and things that the original planes didn't have, so they were quite a bit safer to fly. But just tragically, he was killed in a not connected with our film, in an aviation accident. And all of his planes were tied up in probate court. But it's probably, in the end, we probably wouldn't have gotten anything like we really got it had we tried to do it air to air, because we wouldn't have had as many takes or wait for the right clouds. It would have been very difficult. So you probably noticed, but they're entirely radio-controlled models. And big quarter scale, and a group of pilots flying them that really did some great work. And we could crash them, and we could collide them, which we did by accident a couple of times, and we just put them back together again. But I think it worked well. We filmed in slow motion outside. We blow smoke up with smoke generators, and it would float up white smoke, and it would then be photographed with real clouds in the sky behind them. So the planes could fly behind clouds, through clouds. And it was kind of, it was nominated for an Emmy for special effects, and we sent in that, and nobody noticed it. I don't think they knew what we had done, because it was on TV, especially. It wasn't that detectable what had happened, but gave us a lot of options to do it that way. It's much safer, of course. Anything else? 2 more here. I see Alice. Yeah.
Were you in any of the scenes? I think I saw you one.
Yeah, I was in a couple of scenes. I got killed once. One of the pilots just see me, go rigid in the cockpit. But at the end, the last scene of the 2 soldiers running toward camera, German soldiers, when the hangar's blowing up, and then we jump in the air. That was Chris Bromley, my second unit producer, and me. And we just decided it was kind of the last 2 or 3 days of shooting, and we were so tired. We thought, look, the heck with it. Let's just see if we can get blown up, or how close we can come. We really trusted the pyro guys at that point. I had worked with them for a couple of years, blowing things up in second unit, and I had real confidence in what they could do safely. So the shot was set up so we would run toward camera. And as we were running, we would jump over these mobile trash bags full of gasoline that had detonators in them. So that was a little crazy when you're back there knowing you're going to run through there, and you're hoping that Dave Vivas doesn't, hiccup or something on the switchboard. But as we ran through, he blew them out behind us in succession. It's very hot. And the one thing that happened, you couldn't see it above the frame of the shot, we're running some power lines across this farmer's field that went from, a main line to some town. And the tremendous heat of the flame shorted out the power lines. The gigantic blue spark, which actually helped the shot look pretty good, but it shut all the power off in this town nearby. It shut them down, and they were annoyed, of course. Power failure. But we got the shot, So I guess that's about it. I don't know if anybody's saying one more burning question. I just see Amy with a burning question. Okay, sorry.
You didn't ask who the Star Wars celeb was. I think it was Tony Daniel.
Yes, C-3PO was one of the French. When Indy gets his briefing and he gets all of his the shoes with the knife, the fellow that brings out the suitcase and the funny thick glasses, that's Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO. And I've always, he doesn't get a chance to be out of costume that often. And he gladly came over to Prague and did that scene as a French scientist. It was nicely done. I was grateful to him for doing that. He got paid, but he didn't. He had a French accent. One more. I have a fellow here.
Just one. At the beginning, did you say that this was on Disney Plus?
Oh, well, the series, of which there's, let's just say 22 90-minute movies. Yes, it was on Disney Plus. When was it, guys? Like 2 years ago? Okay, 2023 to 2024. And you could download and stream them. It kind of came and went without, I guess, a lot of fanfare. I didn't see any of it myself. And it's since been taken off as they rotate, different. Yeah, they're not high definition, so they don't come out on Blu-ray. But this one has been up-resed overall to high definition using a program called Topaz. And I think most of the time it worked out pretty well. Certainly on a big screen, if you put up the original shows, it'd be pretty fuzzy. Where this didn't work was when there was, I had certain scenes that the video that had survived was so poor, the things that were cut out and the colors were way off and it just couldn't be brought back in successfully, at least I couldn't do it, that they didn't up-res very well. But someday, if someone wanted to spend a heck of a lot of money, you'd have to, it could be technically done because all the original footage, negative, is still just in crates in the archive, camera rolls and everything. It's not cut in any way. It'd be a huge job, except for, part of this film. Okay, well, thank you so much. And maybe in 10 years we'll do it again. If I can find another 25 minutes to put back in. There isn't any, of course, but thanks for coming out here tonight. Have a safe drive home.
Well, it was such an incredible experience.
getting to listen to Ben Burtt talk to a crowd, like almost 100 people about Young Indiana Jones, and I think, as Lucas said on our last episode, the first time Young Indy has been screened in this format, certainly at the ranch and maybe ever in the world. But, Peter, this is also the end of our season, our third season of the Young Indy Chroniclers. We once talked that maybe this show would only be 3 seasons, and then I think we found more success and excitement than we anticipated. And of course, it's now grown into George Lucas' The Lost Golden Age. What are your favorite memories from season 3 of the Young Indy Chroniclers?
Boy, it's just been such a wonderful journey this whole time. I think each episode has a special place in my heart. Like, definitely being able to speak with Vic Armstrong. Season premiere was really wonderful. And, that's not only a legend in so many ways, but Indiana Jones himself for a lot of Temple. So that was really great, and finding the hidden gems, I think, too. Waldo Rogue, what a great episode. Being able to talk to Hillary, the script supervisor there was just fantastic. And then also just continuing to grow the community as well. I mean, we've done a few episodes where it is, again, we're talking again with Lucas, with Sergio, and just hearing the response to those episodes has been really, really wonderful, really positive. Our live stream, which we then incorporated, our holiday membership live stream that we incorporated into a couple of episodes, was really fun and really cool as well. And I think that's a format I'd love to keep playing with and keep developing. Not just the live stream, but also just the commentaries. There's something really fun about that. I grew up loving just the special features for Star Wars, for Lord of the Rings, and so to be able to kind of give that in a way, because there's not really that present for young Indiana Jones. And for us to take up the mantle and be able to present those things for the fans to be out there and just for us, it's just a really cool, really positive thing. I'm just really grateful that we're able to do this.
Yeah,
What about you, Daniel?
This was the season, because we kind of blew up with the Rick episode at the end of season 2. This was the first season we really got to interact with people who'd listened to the show. Amit, who's helped with the film, and Tony, some of the other indie cosplayers that we've met. We were just at the Lost Relic Market this week, and we met some new fans. And Lisa, you messaged us, you're listening to the show. Thank you so much. Hopefully you got to this episode. Hopefully you paced yourself. You're not hearing this for a while. But so that was really wonderful, to have those interactions. I got to see George at Comic-Con with Amit and Tony. We waited in line and we went in and the podcast let me have that experience. I would never have met those people if not for this podcast. And that's really wonderful. And of course, Jay Underwood, Paige, the interview with was incredible. So we had some great guests, some more technical and below the line guests this season, which was really cool. It turned into that without us realizing it, And Jay Underwood learning he auditioned to play Indiana Jones. I mean, that was great. I had no idea that had happened.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just excited that we've been able to, launch the film and support the film. We're going to England this week, the day after you hear this. We're going to England and seeing this project that you and I talked about, before a screening of Revenge of the Sith in 2023 grow into something that could take us literally halfway around the world. I mean, it's already taken us to Japan, but now to England to record this, to be the chroniclers of something very special that happened in the 90s that we can't let people forget. We can't let the creative community and the artistic community and the fandom community forget. So I'm really thrilled and I'm excited about what comes next.
Absolutely. Listeners out there, this is the season finale. We're definitely coming back, but still TBD when that will be. Our focus going forward will be the documentary and making sure that we can get that delivered when we promised that we would. Nevertheless, we will be popping in from time to time to release some special episodes. They might not be in the traditional season format, but you might find them in the form of a live stream or as a special check-in. Patreon episodes are going to continue. We're still going to do that. So if you want to join the adventure over there, patreon.com/chroniclers, it's a great way to not just support the show, but also support the documentary. And we'll be continuing to do updates and episodes there. And as ever, the Kickstarter is still accepting late pledges. If you haven't jumped onto the documentary bandwagon yet, please do check us out there. And even if you have and you just want to throw some more support, we're still taking whatever we can get. And we appreciate all the support. And even if you're not able to do any of that stuff, we're just grateful that you're here and grateful that you're joining us on this adventure.
please share the word. You know, our Instagram hasn't really grown much lately. We've been focused on other things. So if you're listening and you'd like to support, but you know, obviously times are tough, just share the Instagram, you know, share the account, let people know about the show, and help us grow that way. That's always really appreciated and helps us get placement and algorithms and increases the reach of the stuff that we post, which is always really helpful.
And also check us out on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is, you know, we did cross that monetization level that, you know, Daniel's been hoping for a long time and working hard to achieve. So now if you just watching an episode can actually help us achieve this documentary goal. So all these things are really helpful and really beneficial to us. So thank you all for any support that you're able to offer.
Well, Peter, as sad as it is, the sun is setting, and I think it's time to say your famous phrase.
Well, until next time, keep on adventuring.
Working with the young Indy, Corey, was great because he had this kind of innocent, you know, not actory, very genuine quality. The whole idea of seeing Indy at that age was a brilliant idea, I thought. Watching Corey work with this older actor who played Tolstoy, the chemistry between the two of them was almost like the real Tolstoy with a kid who's a pain in his butt, you know.
We're the Young Indy Chroniclers podcast, and we're producing a new feature-length documentary, George Lucas, The Lost Golden Age.
You got a chance to have the same adventure making the show as what Indy was doing.
We built a Kickstarter campaign to support the film. Late pledges are available now at Kickstarter.com.